Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and I am back again today, having just finished Diane Carey's Ship of the Line. And of course, this is just the book jacket. But yeah, Ship of the Line, a tremendous book, a wonderful book. And we're going to do something a little bit different here, but do you all remember this?
Captain, have you any idea what has just happened?
Our sensors detected a temporal distortion. Then your ship appeared. We nearly hit you.
Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality.
So, of course, this is the end of the episode, the TNG episode, Cause and Effect, where the Enterprise was stuck in the temporal causality loop, and finally resolved it at the very end here, and are meeting up with Captain Bateson of the Bozeman.
Must be mistaken. We left Starbase only 3 weeks ago.
Captain, do you know what year this is?
Of course I do. 2278.
So, if you're anything like me, you always wondered back then, what happened? What was the fate of the starship Bozeman? This vessel brought out of time, brought into the future some 90 or 70 years. Anyway, what happened to them? That was. It always seemed crazy to me that they had Kelsey Grammer in for this kind of bit cameo right at the end, and they never went back and expanded upon it. They still have the chance to. Honestly, they could. Bring him back. Maybe he's coming in. Maybe he's going to sweep in Picard Season 3, Captain Bateson here. Anyway, Ship of the Line tells the story of Captain Bateson, first off. You get to know a little bit more about before he came forward in time, what brought him there. And also, as they say here on the cover, the first voyage of the Starship Enterprise 1701E. So the main timeline follows the crash of the D and the first voyage of the E. So we'll have another close look at the cover here, because it's a finely done cover there. And so the whole thing comes out to be pretty nice. But man, on the inside here, they sure do blow the story. And they really look. It's a whole book. There's like this, and then it goes over to there. But as we do, let's read the inside cover here. Ship of the Line. The Starship Enterprise 1701D has been destroyed, and Captain Jean-Luc Picard finds himself without a command. While waiting for his new ship, Captain Picard has gone with Lieutenant Worf on a diplomatic mission to the Cardassian Empire. As Picard conducts high-level negotiations for the return of Federation prisoners of war, the Starship Enterprise 1701E is being constructed under the supervision of Captain Morgan Bateson, a veteran of the 23rd century, who spent nearly 90 years in a pocket universe. Commanding this new enterprise on what was supposed to be a short shakedown cruise, Captain Bateson has an idea of his own. In defiance of Starfleet command, he will take Starfleet's newest, strongest starship and strike at the heart of the newly aggressive Klingon Empire. Captain Picard's negotiations proceed smoothly until he discovers that a hate-crazed Klingon commander, Captain Bateson's arch-enemy from 90 years ago, has taken the Enterprise from Bateson and launched a vicious attack on Cardassia Prime. To save the ship and preserve the intergalactic peace, Picard must ally himself with his former Cardassian torturer, rely on the legendary skills of one Montgomery Scott, and draw new strength and inspiration from the memory of James T. Kirk. Ship of the Line reveals an unforgettable lost chapter in the ongoing saga of Star Trek that will thrill readers of every generation. That may be one of the worst story blurbs or whatever that I've ever read in my life. That is actually not even what happens in the book at all. they give away so much, and then they even tell you the wrong thing. Just, no, for Pete's, don't read those. I mean, like, I understand you don't have a lot of time, you have to pick and choose what you're going to read, but, like, find a different way. Don't read these things, because they are terrible. But we can read about Diane Carey, who is a tremendous sailor, by the way. Diane Carey is the author of several previous Star Trek novels, including Star Trek Invasion, First Strike, which was the best-selling Star Trek adventure of 1996. She was also the co-creator of the entire Invasion saga. Carey lives in Owasso, Michigan. So, Diane Carey, I have read, I think at this point, maybe 3 or 4 other Diane Carey books. So, I'm pretty familiar with her work. Actually, if you go back in time on my channel to the very first video that I ever put up, which was some 4 years ago, which I just looked up, which I thought was fairly amazing. It was actually TNG's #1 Ghost Ship, written by Diane Carey, which I enjoyed, according to my video. She also wrote some of the Klingon saga stuff, which I read a few months ago, which was really good. So, she knows her stuff. And in the reading of the book about books here, I was able to find out that she is a skilled sailor, and kind of that was one of the things that she brought into this book. There's kind of like also these little inner bits like mixed in little bits from like the Horatio Hornblower series that she kind of puts in little just lines like right before each part of the book. So just kind of interesting there to learn about her history and like how she actually had a ship and like lost it, and how like that played into her and how she wrote this book. So I don't know, lots of interesting things to talk about before I even start talking about the plot of the book, which is in itself very interesting. So, now the story starts out with the filling out of the backstory of the Bozeman and Captain Bateson. And the Bozeman is basically a kind of like he basically says a continuation of like the Coast Guard. He's a border cutter, and their job is to patrol the neutral zone, and they're currently, not at war with the Klingons, but at odds with the Klingons. So they're patrolling that neutral zone border and just kind of keeping tabs on things going on there. Now, there is a Klingon commander named Kozara, who she's kind of butted heads with before, and he and him, Kozara's basically been granted this giant mission from the High Command. So the Klingons have amassed all their forces over on another sector of space to draw the attention and everybody way over that way. While here over in this section of space, they have Kozara and his one ship, who are going to make a run at Starbase 12. And they've been loaded up to bear with like charges, basically detonation charges they can drop off at the starbase. The starbase is home to, I think, maybe something like 50,000 people. So it would be a huge blow at the Federation and a huge blow, a huge win for the Klingons. So Kozara and his crew are on their way to do that. The Bozeman is currently recovering. They're in repairs, not 100%. So when the fleet is called to assemble over there, they do not join. The Enterprise actually rendezvous with them shortly, drops off a couple of new crew for them to replenish there, and then heads to where like the rest of the fleet is headed. So you get like a little bit of Spock. He comes in and talks to Bozeman for a second. So interesting little stuff there. But I guess the real thing is you get this dynamic with Captain Bozeman and his crew, which is like completely different than what you would normally expect. They're on like a first name basis. They talk differently to each other. There's a lot of like sailor talk almost. And one of Captain Bateson's interesting things that he does often is talk about like word origins. and how most of them come from like sailing origin. So and this is the first maybe third of the book is kind of this, just following this crew and their adventure, and what they end up having to do is to save Starbase 12. They're the only ship in the area. They get wind of what's going down. They realize they have to stop Kozara. However, they know that they're like underpowered to do it. So now that they've been spotted, Kozara basically has to either kill them or his mission is a failure. So he's chasing them down, and they're trying to stop Kozara, trying to delay him, do anything they can to get him to stop from getting to Starbase 12. They come up with a sneaky way to drop a communicator buoy, and they send that out, hoping that that'll at least get a signal out. They kind of realize at this point it's a suicide mission for them. So this whole backstory is so different from what you see in that short clip of them kind of standing on the bridge, which is cool. I'm glad that they added like all this additional drama like right before what happened. But they managed to evade Kozara long enough, and they see a kind of a nebula up ahead, and they can hide in that nebula. So they go and they do that. They hide in the nebula, and then once they get in there, pretty much I think immediately they encounter the Enterprise, and they come out of it, and here comes the Enterprise D. The Enterprise D blows its I think it's shuttle bay just in time to vent them out of the way, and the Bozeman flies past. Disaster's averted. I love that episode of TNG. Like I've probably seen that episode 50 times if I've seen it 100 times. I don't know. It's a very good episode. Cause and effect. So anyway, happy ending for everyone involved, at least. Well, not for the crew of the Bozeman, of course. They've been brought forward in time 90 years. So also what you get here in this kind of part one of this book is that aftermath, which is interesting, where you get Picard sitting Bozeman down and telling him the hard truth that, you know, he's been thrown forward in time. And I mean, that's a hard thing because there's no way to like send a message back in time. So like everybody thinks that they've just been lost, even though they've just been sent forward in time. They are able to tell him, kind of cheer him up, that the Bozeman was able to get the message through. Starbase 12 was saved by the Enterprise, and Kozara was disgraced by his failure and kind of set off as a failure to the Empire. So, and that's like part one of the book, and that kind of gives you the background of Bateson, his crew, and there's so much more I could go into in talking about the different members of his crew and their different aspects, but you know, there's just too much. There is too much. Anyway, again, this thing, you give away too much. Like, I went into this book and I had no idea about the Cardassian part of it at all, which was an interesting and fun surprise to throw in there, and also the Kirk part. So, anyway, no, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Part 2 of the book begins. So part 2 begins almost immediately following the crash of the Enterprise D. Well, maybe some months after it. They've been cleared of any wrongdoing, and they're kind of preparing for their next commands. And while they're doing that, they're there at Starbase 12 to witness the launch of the Enterprise E. And it's at this point where Picard has not really fully accepted that he wants to take command. So you have this kind of bit where like Riker's trying to like talk him up, and even like whole the rest of the crew is trying to like maybe like cheer him up and like just kind of, but he's in a different place right now and he's not sure if he wants to take command. Now the Enterprise E is currently being finished up, and it's being worked on, or has been worked on, by the former crew of the Bozeman, who now is like basically in charge at Starbase 12, and they are working on ships and working on other things there and taking care of that Starbase area. But they're in charge of kind of bringing the Enterprise E into life, along with a fun little cameo, Montgomery Scott. So Montgomery Scott, of course, also brought from the past to the future, is one of the main like chief engineers of the Enterprise E. So adds like a little bit of fun backstory to, just like the story of the creation of this Enterprise as well. So this book is already ticking a few different boxes. You've got a little bit of E backstory. You've got some fun filling out of this TNG episode, and there's even more yet. So like I said, Picard isn't sure if he wants to be the captain, but it's not to be his choice right now anyway, because he has a diplomatic mission that he's been assigned to. Starfleet has caught wind of basically several different Cardassian camps where they have different Starfleet members and other members of other species still captured in underguard and being tortured in some cases. So they're going to ask Picard to go in there. And I thought it was kind of cool too. And he chooses to take with him, of course, Dr. Crusher. And he stops off at DS9 so that he can pick up Mr. Worf. And neither of them really play like a big part in the book at all. They're just kind of like there to be there. But it's perfect because those are the two that went with him in the Chain of Command, 2-part series in TNG. Because, of course, they are talking about Gul Madred. And that's who they mentioned here on the thing, too. And you would have picked that up and you would have known that, and then it would have blown that whole part of the story for you if you had read that thing. So, don't read those things. Yeah, anyway, Gul Madred, the Cardassian torturer, kind of information gatherer, has been keeping these series of Madred villages to learn more about his enemies. And it's here at this point in the story they actually give you like a short view of one of those villages. The crew of, I think it's the USS Durant, and they are basically subjected to like war games continually with the Cardassians, and they've been doing this for months now. They've already lost most of their senior staff and a lot of their crew, and are just kind of continually subjected to like constant war games by the Cardassians so they can learn more about how they react. So that's where you meet these twins. I think it's like Mike and Steve. There's a captain of a civilian freighter there as well. They don't play like a huge part in the story, but just kind of they throw them in there now to give that little, so you know that there's something more coming on down the line. But they, like I said, they have to participate in these war games constantly against the Cardassians, or be killed. So, again, so it's Picard's mission now to head into Cardassian territory and figure that out. So before he leaves on this civilian ship, because he doesn't want to go on like a Starfleet ship and send the wrong message, he gets a civilian transport to take him to Cardassia Prime. Riker, unbeknownst to him, installs this little holodeck and gives him some James Kirk holotapes to watch while he's on his way to Cardassia Prime. So it was at this point when I was in this book where it almost came to me where like I almost feel like I'm reading like this series of little short stories, because there's so many different little things going on. There's like the short story at the beginning of the past of Bateson, and then you've got these little, now we have these little stories of Captain Picard going and talking to Captain Kirk in critical situations and learning more about his command styles and the way he did things. And this is a good bit of the book. There's a fair amount of pages devoted to this. And it's kind of like, it's like over here, and like here's the main story, and it's like up, you know what I'm saying? It's like off in another land, but it's done very well, and it's interesting to see like the two talking to each other, and she knows the characters like well enough too that like it plays well. So you get to see Picard talking to Kirk during the encounter with the Romulans. The big, you know what I'm talking about. You get to see Picard talking to Kirk when there are two Kirks, when Kirk splits into two. That's also very interesting. So it gives you an interesting look there, and then that gives Picard his motivation that he needs to continue on with his mission and to come to his decision. So that's what's going on in that part. Now, back on the Enterprise E, Captain Bateson has been given command to do a short shakedown mission. And see, this is where the book, or this weird book jacket that was completely wrong, gets it very wrong. And like, it almost seems like whoever wrote that couldn't have read the book, because that's not at all what happens. Captain Bateson takes command of the E with a somewhat skeleton crew and is sent to do a kind of like a shakedown war games at the edge of the neutral zone. However, he does this at the with the orders of Starfleet. He doesn't go against Starfleet. He has the orders of Starfleet Command. He kind of has a little bit of pull with Starfleet because of everything he went through, and kind of like his time as a commissioned captain is actually longer than anyone else's because of the time jump he went through. So he has some pull, and I'm sure that he pushed to do this somewhat, but he does have permission to do it. But it is a very silly thing to do with your flagship. Go to the border of the neutral zone and engage in a war game with another ship there. But he's doing it from the perspective of Starfleet needs to have more readiness. We need to be prepared. There is going to be another enemy coming at some point, whether it be the Klingons, the Cardassians, the Dominion. Someone's going to be coming for them. So that was his kind of thought to Riker. Riker the whole time. Now, Riker has taken over as first officer for Bateson, and also they have, I think, Data, Dr. Crusher. No, not Dr. Crusher's with Picard. Counselor Troy is aboard with him as well. So they have a little bit of the Enterprise crew there, the original crew, who are kind of against what's going on. Like, it seems like they're like, whoa, this seems way out of line. Why are we doing this? And they're totally right, too, because it's way out of line. They totally shouldn't be doing this. Because, as we know, or as we learn, Kozara has learned. Now, Kozara, you would think he would be dead, right? So, Kozara, from the past, is alive still. Klingons have a decent lifespan, right? So, he's a little bit older. He's definitely gray. And he is kind of been in exile on the far reaches of the Klingon Empire. But having learned about what's happened through a secret agent, he is able to convince the Empire to give him a ship and give him a chance to take the flagship of the Federation, to take the Enterprise E, and kind of regain his honor in doing so. And that's what he does. Right? But anyway, yeah, the Enterprise is out there on the neutral zone ready to do their war game when they expect to find their war game partner. And at this time, of course, they've powered down their shields and phasers in preparation for the war game. That happens every time. Light. Okay. What am I doing? Don't do that. Okay. So in preparation for the war game, they've reduced all their power. So they're at a disadvantage. And here comes Kozara. So he comes in his warship. And basically, in the Enterprise E's first mission, they are handily taken by a warship of elderly Klingons. And Bateson is kind of like, oh, well, I guess you guys were right. So, but yeah, that's like, it's weird. It's and they have kind of a MacGuffin. They neutralize Data with this. Anyway, they neutralize Data, so he's out of the picture. He's out of the story, and they're able to, since all the shields are lowered, beam in a bunch of grenades, knock everybody out. They don't kill anybody. There's some honor involved here. They don't kill them. They knock the crew of the E out. They lock them up in the lower decks, and they lock them up into pods. And they take control of the Enterprise E. And this group of elderly Klingons heads into Cardassian space and starts blowing up anything that they can blow up, trying to cause some trouble. The the Captain Kozara is trying to like regain his honor in the eyes of his son. Something like that. It's kind of all very silly, of course, but that's how these things go sometimes. But yeah, they have control, just that easy. They're in command of the Enterprise, but it's actually not that easy. Down in the little pods where they've captured them, Scotty is able to get them out where they're at, and they're able to start mounting their retake of the ship. And you get this also little fun series of scenes there in the end of these different ways where Bateson, Riker, and Scotty and crew are able to disable and dispatch different groups of Klingons without killing them. It's all like a whole non-lethal book, basically. And they dispatch all these Klingons in all these various fun different ways. Like, there's even at one point where they change the gravity and they freeze the deck plating. And they send the Klingons sliding down the deck plating. So there's all these very fun different scenes that she writes in here. They're just very good there in the end, where they're able to retake the ship basically all the way up to the bridge, almost up to the bridge. It's at this point in the story where we're going to switch gears and we're going to go to Picard again. So he has got all of his motivation back from his watching his Hollows with Kirk, and now he's moving to doing the his original mission, and they jump right into it too. Where basically it's Picard confronting Gul Madred. Oh man, there was such a good part in here too. I almost want to find it so I can read it to you. But anyway, Picard is confronting Gul Madred, and there, in the last part, it's he kind of lays out exactly how the Federation got its information, and it got its information from Gul Madred's daughter, who's pretty well disgusted with his behavior, and was the one to contact the Federation and tell them about these awful camps. So, I'm not gonna find it. That's fine. I'll let you all read it yourselves. I'll just give you the gist of it. But anyway, she confronts her father and tells him, he's a disgrace, and they're kind of like holding her there too as well. But basically, he's got to give up his. Picard kind of he pulls out something that's like a countdown. There's like a countdown for something. He's got like a bomb. He's pretending like he's gonna blow up a bomb. I don't. He's not gonna do it anyway. But it's got like lights on it that are going out or whatever, and like he's pretending he's gonna blow up everybody there, including the Gul's daughter. And as it's counting down, it's going further and further and further and further, and he's kind of like looking, he's not really paying attention. The Gul's like freaking out, and he's looking up at the ceiling. It's like, well, how many lights are there, Gul? Are there 4 or are there 5? Oh, it was really good. Like when you read it, if you've seen that, you'll know it's good. It was very well done. Anyway, Gul Madred agrees, and in the end, they free these villages. They actually fly there in a couple of Cardassian ships. They free the crew of the Durant, the crew of this civilian freighter, and they crew some other ships. And it's at that point they get word. Scotty's managed to send out notice about the E's hijacking. So they get word of that, and Picard, as the senior Starfleet officer in the area, takes command of the situation, assembles his little fleet of Cardassian ships and his civilian cruiser, and goes out to meet the Enterprise E. Boom, so that's that part. On the bridge, on the Enterprise E, they get word that they're arming the quantum torpedoes. So Riker and Bateson think the worst, that they've reached Cardassia Prime. They're going to start like bombing the cities. They rush the bridge, only to be pretty well immediately captured by Kozara and crew. But then it's at this point in the story where they resolve everything through talking, which is one of the wonderful things about Star Trek. And basically, like, I don't want to give the whole thing away. It's really good. But Bateson, in the end, kind of tells Kozara that, he won. Like, I humiliated you earlier, but then you got me back. You took my ship. you know. And because of Kozara's actions throughout the book, this is able to happen. Like, he doesn't kill anyone, he just kind of traps them. He doesn't kill the other crew of the ship they were ready to meet, he just strands them somewhere. So the whole thing has been fairly peaceful, even though it's been the takeover of the Federation flagship. So in the end, you know, Bateson says, you know, Kozara, you've beaten me. Kozara says, well, okay then, I'm done. And he realizes, well, I've been doing all this for the wrong reasons anyway. Like, this is ridiculous. And he gives up right there. And that's the end of hostilities, you know. I mean, there's a little bit more to it, of course, you know. But for the most part, that's how it kind of winds itself up. And you get this little fun scene at the end with Picard and his fleet arriving when hostilities have already been stopped. And Picard's like, he wants to get beamed aboard. He beams aboard with like a phaser rifle at the ready. He's like, disarm immediately. And all the Klingons have already handed over their disruptors. And Riker's like, well, the bridge is yours already. So, a very interesting ending. Of course, it goes on from there that, of course, Captain Picard takes command of the Enterprise E at that point. His little dilemma is resolved and he's realized what he wants to do. And then Captain Bateson is given command of the USS something or other, which they've pulled some strings to rename the Bozeman 2. So you got a new Bozeman, which is like a defense fighter or something like that. That they are going to be, him and his old crew will be back at. So a happy ending for everyone involved there. Oh, at the very end of the book, they actually play out like the kind of beginning of First Contact, where apparently the Bozeman is there with the Defiant defending Earth, which I never noticed before. Or maybe I did and I forgot. But it was kind of interesting there that they gave you that little bit. But the book ends with that part of First Contact with the E warping off towards Earth to save the day. So, yeah, ship of the line. It's like so many little threads and stories and things that go on in there that get kind of tied up. So again, you get the cameo. You get the Kelsey Grammer cameo fully fleshed out and explained and even given an ending. And I don't know exactly how it ended for the Bozeman, but their crew and their ship was pretty tough. So I'm going to assume that they survived First Contact and are still out there doing what they do best. You get a very fun, if not, I don't know, fully emotionally involved resolution to the Chain of Command series with Picard and Gul Madred. And I liked how they did it. That was good. I liked how she did it. It was very good. It's very interesting. The stuff with Kirk and Picard was fun. There's a lot of fun taking back the ship stuff with Riker and Scotty. Actually, Scotty kind of shines in this too. She writes a very good Scotty, which makes me actually want to dive back into some of her TOS stuff because really she does Kirk, Scotty, Spock very well. So I think maybe that's where we might go from here. So we will see. But I would recommend Ship of the Line and anything by Diane Carey because she's good and it's good. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We will see you guys in the next one. Live long and prosper. Have a good night. Bye.